Welcome back everyone, Casey with CX Mods. We've been waiting for this day for quite a while, and if you've been following along with our Corolla Cross build, we've already done this, but we are going to be putting our spacer lift kit on our RAV4, and we've kind of been holding off on this because we wanted to do wheels and tires at the same time, which I end up finding a steal for some Icon wheels that have the same Toyo tires that we have on our Corolla Cross on those wheels, but they are in a 245/70/17. So I wanted to do the wheels and tires and lift kit all at once, so that's what we're doing today. And there's one kind of silly thing that I wanted to show you first, but I was joking around with my buddy the other day, and I was testing out launch control, and for some reason Toyota was kind of sneaky and they put that in there for some reason, but I'll go over that real quick for fun. And then in the process, before we get started, we're gonna do a height comparison with the front and rear bumper, and then also when we get the factory wheels and tires off, we'll weigh them against the new wheels and tires. So I'll show you the launch control real quick, and then we'll pull it inside and kind of get started on everything. To do this, put in drive, obviously, then turn it into sport mode. That'll pop up in the center. So that's eco, go clockwise, sport, left foot on the brake, right foot on the gas. Oh man. I'm sorry that had nothing to do with the video, but I figured I'd show you for fun. So now let's get down to the details. Before we get started and get the vehicle up in the air, I'm going to measure the front and rear bumper just to give you an idea of where it's sitting right now. So pretty much the bottom, the lowest point of the front bumper at the bottom is about 11 inches off the ground. Now the measurements for the rear, I'm going to use the bumper as a reference since not everyone's going to have a hitch to go off on. So pretty much where this curves at on the rear bumper is at 14 inches. Don't mind the mess, but we're gonna weigh the factory wheel and tire on our scale here. So if I let go, let it balance as best I can, right at about 50 pounds, might go a little over, 2.2. Grab our other wheel and tire. I guess I haven't said what wheel it is yet, but here you go. These are Icon Journeys with Toyo Open Country AT3s on them. So this is the same tire that we have on our Corolla Cross, but this is in a 245/70/17, but the wheel specs will be 17x8 plus 38. All right, so this wheel pretty much on its own 55.8. I think I saw 56.2. So really not much heavier than I was anticipating, honestly. So I think they'll look really good on a RAV4 when we're done. So I figured we'd do a quick side-by-side with the factory wheel and tire versus our new one. Hopefully I can get both in here. So this is a 225/65/17, and like I said, this is a 245/70/17. So the tire alone should actually give us a little bit of a lift as well, along with our spacer kit. And then we'll just do a head-on comparison here. Definitely wider as well. And since these are an 8-inch wide wheel compared to the 8.5 we have on our Corolla Cross, the 1/2 inch width less on these, plus the 245, we have really good protection for our wheel with the added tire. We got the rest of the wheels and tires off. We're gonna start in the front, driver's side, and the first step is going to be, I'm gonna remove 2 of these nuts and then loosen one of them. So that way we're pretty much done up here, and we can start disconnecting everything down below. So I would start with this back one first, just because it's kind of in a weird spot, but with the other ones tightened down, it should come off pretty easily. Just don't drop it. That's the key there. Close. This one's in a bit of a weird spot. I haven't done this before in this vehicle, but it won't come off all the way, just with the clearance above it. So I'm gonna put it back down a little bit, so that way when everything drops, I can access it and remove the rest. Since that one's gonna stay on, I'll just fully remove the next 2. I'm not going to go through the whole disassembly process because this has been done before and it's really not too complicated. You just have your brake and ABS line you have to disconnect here, and then hopefully the sway bar link doesn't give me too much issues, but it's looking a little rusty. So if I can find some WD-40 or PB Blaster, I'm going to hit that first. Once we get those done, then we'll just get onto the main bolts for the assembly. But there's also a sneaky little plastic bracket here that's holding on to the ABS line. So I'll get that out of the way first, and then we'll get the big bolts out of here, and then we'll be able to remove the last nut above and get everything out. Just make sure that you have something underneath the lower control arm here, just so that everything doesn't fall out and the CV joint doesn't come apart. So I'll get this done, and then we'll go on to the next steps. As suspected, the sway bar end link is just spinning, so even when I hit it with PB Blaster, so I'm gonna have to put an Allen in the end and then hit the adjustable wrench on it, just like that. So just a heads up, if it's looking a little rusty, you'll probably have to go about it that way. As you can see, I got the suspension out. Unfortunately, I did have a hang up on both the sway bar links when I went to put the Allen inside, so it wasn't spinning. Eventually that got stripped out, and I just fought with it for too long, and I ended up having to put some vice grips on the back side of it, and then kind of wrenching it off at that point. But I banged them up, the links up enough that I won't be putting it back on since I don't have replacements right now. I've driven vehicles without sway bars before. On my last 4Runner, I removed it, so I know what it's like. I'm just gonna feel it out, but I'll most likely end up replacing them in the future. But for today, just to get the sway bar links out of the way so we can put everything back, we'll just roll with it there. So we got this out. I cleaned up the threads on this so that we've got nice clean contact, and then you'll want to put some Loctite around the stud. I'm kind of just putting it around the top all around and then letting it run down. last one here. Grab your wrench so that they're tightened all the way. Just clean up the bottom here. You'll grab your spacer. Sometimes they like to go on one way over another, so I'm gonna have to try out different orientations with it. That feels pretty good there. So now that we've got these on, I can put everything back together, and I'll do that now. We got the front all buttoned up. Everything's good, except I did have to take the sway bar links out, and we'll worry about that later. And the rears are super easy. You just have this one bolt here, and then that'll allow you to drop the control arm along with the spring, so then you can put the spacer on. So I'll do that now, and then I'll show you what the next process looks like. And one thing I forgot to mention is that you do need to remove the sway bar link here at the bottom so that the spring can fully come out. Once I got the bolt out for the sway bar, you can kind of pull everything down, and then you'll be able to angle the spring out. And at this point, all we're going to do is put the spacer on top of the spring, and then kind of in reverse order, pull that down. It might be easier to do this with the spring compressor. I'm going to try without it. I've got one if I need it, but another thing to note is the rubber little insulator piece that goes on top of the spring. I left it on top of the spacer for the Corolla Cross, but I think I'm going to do without it. The manufacturer says that it's not needed, so just to kind of make it a little easier, since the spacer is so tall, without having to try and get that piece to stay on, I'm just going to do without it. But I'll get this put back into place, do the other side, and then just kind of double check my work, and then get the wheels on. I just buttoned up the rear suspension, checked everything over just to make sure everything was tight. We're good there. So now we just need to put the wheels on. Once again, I am running some hub rings just to make sure that they're perfectly centered when I mount them up, and then going with Corolla lug nuts on these as well. It's what I've always run. Never had an issue, and they're super affordable. So I'm going to throw these on, and then we'll go outside and see what it looks like. So I know I'll get some questions on clearance with the wheels and tires, and there's definitely rubbing on this piece here, but the nice thing about that is you can remove it, which I've done over here already. It's just this little piece here. So there's 4 screws that hold that in. I'm not going to put this one back in because it has this insert and I don't want to see that, but you can put the screws back in and then gain a bunch of clearance here. So here it is removed. As you can see, we've got ample clearance, but I think eventually I will hit that with a heat gun just to press that in, make sure get a little more room there. But it was making quite a bit of noise before, and that should go away now. And one last thing to note, just when you put the rear springs back in, the spacer tends to like having the opening of the top spring towards the outside of the vehicle so that it kind of hugs that inner portion of the spacer. It seems to sit a lot better, so just keep that in mind. I would orientate the opening that way, and then also always make sure that you have the spring seated correctly in the lower control arm. So there you have it. I think it looks really good. It actually has more of a presence now even when I lowered it off the lift, I could tell instantly that it's significantly taller. So I'm gonna measure the front bumper and then the rear and let you know what we're looking at. So for the front, it's about 13, so 2 inches gained in the front. And then in the rear, we're looking at 17 inches, and I think we had 14 before. So it's actually, I actually like where the stance is at right now. I left the 25 millimeter spacers on there just to kind of give it a more aggressive stance, but overall I'm really happy with it. This is going to be a good lift for those just looking for a little more ground clearance and then just more of a tougher, meaner look, I guess you could say. But install is the same as the Corolla Cross, so it's not terrible. The biggest thing is just getting the bolt in the back control arm guided through without screwing up the threads. So what I found best would be to use 2 crowbars to kind of align it, because it gets like, once you get it out, the assembly kind of shifts and it's kind of a pain in the butt to get the bolt guided back through. But that's the biggest problem. And then obviously the issue I ran into the sway bar links, which I'm not surprised with how bad they look, but really happy with it. Let me know your thoughts. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email us at sales@cxmods.com or find us on social media and message us there. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.